Hello and welcome. You're listening to the audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, the novelization of a 13-book series. It is the story of a secret agent from a multiversal government agency discovering the location of God and taking action to kill her. The series covers the war between gods and mortals who create and destroy themselves and their worlds. The novels are written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you would like to support the creation of this series and add input of your own, swing by patreon.com/shecamefromnowhere to become a secret agent. You'll get access to the entire novel, new series chapters as they become available, and audio from each. Link in the description. And now, enjoy
Chapter 10. Otter Confusion. 1. Griffin and Ever move cautiously through the halls of the dim prison, their de-atomizers drawn, years of combat experience taking control. They didn't need words, body language and hand signals filling the silence. When they heard movements, they didn't even discuss their flank. They just did it, Ever sweeping wide. That's when they saw the dolphin warrior, her face disfigured by a metal eyepiece but still recognizable. Marilyn? Griffin asks, keeping his weapon trained on her and fully engaged. I never thought I'd be glad to see you, she rasps hoarsely. I was sure I would die here. Before the network went down, they stowed us in places we wouldn't get killed. We lost track of a lot of agents during the war, Griffin says, lowering his weapon, signaling for Ever to remain vigilant. We assumed you were dead, or worse. The director's going to be excited. He knew it was a risk sending a signal out, but news like this couldn't wait. There was a long delay before she picked up, though, and her image looked odd. The agent chalked it up to interference, but noted it in the back of his mind. Nice weather down here, he says, the bureau code phrase for a potential hostile captured. You want me to eliminate it? Cloudy but clear, he goes on, meaning, don't believe it's a threat. Awaiting your command. He didn't want to, but he would for her. Enjoy your time, Sarah Kay says stiffly, the code for stand down. And that's when Griffin knew something was wrong. While he had no desire to kill a long-lost fellow agent, his wife took no chances and would never give an order to stand down to a threat. From behind his simulation of Sarah Kay, Sebastian could see the agent wasn't buying it, although he played it cool until he could figure out what was going on. The other knew he had to take advantage of Griffin's caution if he was going to see his mentor. Bring her back with you, Sebastian says to the facade. Perhaps she'll bring us insight into the recent incursion. Finish the mission and bring her in for a mind wipe. Looks like you're coming with us, Griffin says, dread creeping in. What had happened to his wife, the woman that he had sworn to protect? Would he live long enough to find out? He had seen this tactic before, mind-leaked sleeper agents suddenly becoming active and integrating whole squadrons, well-trained, battle-hardened agents in one fell swoop. But the boss had said to take her, so he was going to take her and sleep in his mech suit with one eye open. Come on, the wolf-faced agent says gruffly. Ever's headed back to the ship. Go with him. Griffin gives his partner a look that says, watch her close. Anything weird, shoot first, and ask questions later. I'll cover for you. Surma consumed everything it touched, absorbing all biological matter into itself. It was always cautious when integrating its DNA into a new host because it had to first detect and disarm its biological security systems. Next, it needed to convince every cell to reprogram themselves to have the same structure as the Surma, fusing itself with its host cells. The process started slow, picking up speed as the host bodies fell in line with its agenda, so the infection was full-blown before Sakan noticed it was growing in her suit. She'd been so caught up in the battle and trying to stay connected with the network's other fleeing survivors, she'd been in straight beast mode. It wasn't even the growth on her skin and inside her body that got her attention, though it was the presence inside her mind. As the mind link had fallen silent, the survivors' voices dying out, she could hear the Surma whispering to her, telling her to relax as her life ebbed away. The Illic wasn't giving up without a fight. She'd regained the unity she had felt for the first time in her life, and she had to bring it back to her people in order to unify them. The slime didn't want her to keep moving, releasing chemicals to get her to lay down wherever they were and simply let the process happen. Wherever they stopped was where the Surma would start its new growth. They didn't care if they were killing their hosts. The leftover matter was always enough to feed on until they could find another. It was surprised at the Ilic's will. She was losing the fight, like all creatures did against the slime, but this one maintained its sense of purpose. It wasn't going to stop until it reached its goal. Instead of fighting, the Surma decided to let Sakan carry it where it would. In its limited consciousness, it figured that there would be more creatures wherever it ended up, and it could just as easily spread there. The slime had no idea it was growing in a gel suit, and once it consumed the entire Illic, there would be nowhere else for it to go. Never in all its centuries had it encountered technology like this. In fact, the whole passive approach is very unlike Surma at all, since its very DNA was hardwired to consume everything, only to create more genetic replicas of itself. The pain-killing chemicals from Kaplan's suit held it at bay and slowed Sakan's consumption. The feeling was nice. It decided to take as long as it could to eat her. So the Illic pushed onward into the snow-covered mountains of Shikwa. She could feel her body weakening, but she had to make it to her homeworld. She couldn't just let her father to forever wonder where she had gone. The Surma took pleasure in seeing her continue, visualizing with her the heavily populated world she'd come from. It could bide its time until then, it rationalized. There'd be many tasty treats when Sakan finally expired, and if it understood their burial rituals correctly, she would be surrounded by them when it spored, giving itself an opportunity to take the whole world. Content to starve itself for now for the feast it would have later, the Surma watched its host struggle down the rugged terrain, unable to eat or rest, growing weaker and more confused. There were moments when the slime had to help direct her feet and encourage her to fly, indifferent to its suffering it felt for going against its own nature. Eventually, Sakan collapsed, unable to go further, and the Surma decided it wasn't going to wait any longer. "Father, I'm sorry," she gasped in the dark language. "I failed." Not to be deterred from a good meal, the slime began to pick up the conversion process. It could lie dormant in the snow for centuries, it rationalized, waiting for the climate to change and some unsuspecting creature to happen along. One touch was all it would take to kick off the whole process. It paused when it felt its host become conscious, experiencing elation and relief wash over it. "Father," Sakan says as Triton scooped her body out of the snow. The Prime Leader recognized that she was his daughter, but he also knew that she couldn't actually be his daughter. His daughter had been killed decades ago when Central swept through Lightstander and all neighboring realities, killing everything that was infected by the Mind Link. He was there when Sakan and his brother had died. He had taken them back to his homeworld to be buried, yet here she was, again, alive. He thanked the maker of the universe, for in it all things were. 2. Viridian saw all the possibilities at once. In some worlds, Sarah Kay was alive. In others, dead. There were many realities where there was only the Council and the stars, silence stretching into the cosmos. In this one, she'd be killed by an otter, and the angel had done nothing to stop it. They wanted to. Even though they knew nothing objectively mattered, they'd been with the CIB director for a long time and wanted to save her from any unnecessary deaths. Unfortunately, it hadn't been possible. While they swore loyalty to a unidimensional human, their highest loyalty was always to the Council. The war raged across many realities, Sarah Kay subtly and steadily increasing her power by killing off the others in her quantum pool, becoming someone even Triton feared. As she trimmed her own web, she was also trimming theirs, cutting off their eyes, ears, and influence over the multiverse. A threat to Triton was a threat to all angels. Knowing that there would be an inquiry after her death, and knowing it would be understood that the only reason it happened was because they had allowed it, Baradian left Central with Triton moments before the occurrence. From now on, there would be no safe haven for them anywhere except for on Centric itself, among their people. They assumed they would be safe among the Council. They thought they'd be heralded as the heroes saving them all from the revived Mind Link. But they had been away from the Council for too long. It wasn't just one from this reality that had deserted either. Most from most realities chose Sarah Kay, and Baradian was branded a traitor. The angel realized too late that this is what Triton wanted all along. They'd waited patiently, biding their time while Baradian did the dirty work for them. Sometimes it was successful, sometimes it was not, but here on Centric, Triton pointed the dark pistol at him, firing an unholy bullet at this Baradian, crumbling the angel to dust. Unlike most other creatures' experience, his final moments weren't terrifying. He looked out, still living in many places and times. He wasn't alone in death. Every other angel version of him looked back at him, learning from his mistakes and resolving to do better because of it. Across the multiverse, there was a celebration over him, not for his death, but in memory of everything that he had done with his life. There'd be others who'd make better choices than him. This version of Baradian had let his ward be killed because of torn loyalty, so others wouldn't make the same mistake. 3. You said you'd give them half of whatever we found, Ever says as they hurried down the infinite hallway with Marilyn trying to keep up with them in their mech suits. I lied, okay? They're pirates. You really think they'd hold up on their end of the bargain? We'll be safe on Central soon, so they'll just have to deal. In the meantime, we spend the whole mission looking over our shoulders. The alien crew pours out of the same doorway the agents just recently came through and start firing sonic defibrillators after them, the blast echoing down the hallway. This is what I mean. He hands Marilyn a techno wand. Are you able to fight? According to eyewitnesses, the Imogen converged in the hallway as expected and then made her way into Sneersbury. Triton didn't want to take 5A_Canal-N's nearly 400-member mind-linked entourage through the densely populated city, but his chaperones insisted they needed the Imogen's ruling as soon as possible. They weren't going to usurp them if they were right, but they were losing support from the Council, and while the judgment was pending, they called every decision into question. It was not quite the time to show their hand just yet, and they allowed themselves to be led along. There was something very different about this mind link. For one, it was less aggressive than it had been. The members didn't seem to care if you were integrated with them or not. They were just happy to help, so Saki used their helpfulness to their advantage. They watched Triton, gathered supplies as needed, and built shelters as they traveled. Far from being something to be scared of, 5A_Canal-N's mind link was a total boon. They want to overthrow the Bureau and everything we stand for, Griffin yells as he runs with Ever firing bioelectric globules, Marilyn riding on the back of his suit. Get a grip, Griffin, Ever yells, ions hammering them. They want their tech. In 5A_Canal-N's mind link, Certain saw everything he hoped for. Individuals serving one another for the sake of the community. Granted, he knew it was the Angel's influence that was coloring his perspective. Self-sacrifice was a collective feature for them, but it was more than that. The Tritons were only looking after their larger selves. These creatures came from a myriad of different realities. Since they had the ability to understand others around them, they showed them compassion for their flaws. If he'd been raised in a universe like that, he probably would have turned out very differently. From the eyes of many Tritons, he got to see the carnage he caused by introducing the Furbtech and then by merging them with CAK_BRD's mind link. He knew the Bureau would engage in a scorched earth policy to protect themselves. So, while many Tritons were apprehensive about their meeting with the Imogen, he looked forward to it since he was sure she would understand that he was only acting from his hurt. The mind link stopped in the middle of the long hallway and began setting up camp. Sneersbury is just a few doors down, Saki says. If we push on, we can rest there. We have enough resources, 5A_Canal-N shakes her head. We're waiting for others. Two men in mech suits charge down the hallway toward their camp, and Certain moves from afar, Triton to one present with the mind link, stepping forward with his guardian angels as they draw their flaming bone swords. He wasn't going to let anything bad happen to the only good thing he had ever experienced. While he wasn't putting his life on the line per se, being an angel meant that he had plenty to spare. Stop, or we'll drop you, Triton yells. But instead of stopping, the two men charged through the camp, a dolphin flipping from the back of one and landing next to the angels. As they turn to face what they assume to be a threat, they catch sight of the crew of alien pirates rushing toward them with their large array of weaponry. They don't care if you're for or against us, the dolphin says. You're in their way. Saki raises her sword to cut down the dolphins, but 5A_Canal-N yells, Stop! She's telling the truth. She's one of us. Marilyn looks at her with relief, glad to be back among her own. Collectively, the mind link prepares themselves for the pirates' attack. Gurrig Wolf didn't want to be chasing these guys through the infinite hallway. Moreover, he had absolutely no desire to fight the strange assortment of creatures they'd run into. He was tired, truth be told. He faced the threat of mutiny on a daily basis since everywhere they had access to had already been looted or had security so high it became an impossibility to sneak onto. He missed the old days, but he couldn't just give up on the pirate life. He had a shop to keep up, mouths to feed. Over the last couple of decades, he'd gotten so caught up in just trying to survive, he'd forgotten why he'd completely cut himself off from his own family, leaving society and his planet behind as he headed for the stars. Some days he was afraid that he was going to be forever caught in the grind until the day he died. Other days he hoped it would be soon because the thought of growing old terrified him. Don't be scared, lads. We've never backed down from a fight and we never will. He hoped it would be the last time he had to say that. Looking for war? You'll get war, Griffin roars, raising his thermo-ionic arm cannon. Ever steps in front of the wolf-faced agent, grabbing his arm. Are you nuts? You started this. If you fire that, you'll kill Marilyn and all the other innocent bystanders. Gurig's ionic fibrillator drops members of 5A_Canal-N's mind link with seizures, so Saki steps forward, swinging her sword and missing everyone. The aliens laugh, their humor quickly turning to horror as the slice she made in the fabric of reality behind them starts sucking them into the dark realm on the other side. Trayton, the other angels, Griffin, and Ever grab the mind linked, trying not to get sucked in themselves. Come on, Trayton yells over the wind. We've got to get out of here. The hallway won't repair itself while it's occupied. They use their wings to pull themselves forward, dragging the daisy-chained mind link towards Sneersbury. Ever and Griffin pull with them, metal boots gripping the smooth stone. They get to the door, struggling with it against the suction, and finally get it open, leading everyone into Sneersbury's repository of salvation, a correction facility for those off-worlders and hardened criminals. Don't worry, Trayton says to his companions. The council will come and vouch for us. Well, a Sneersbury eel says, getting off his bunk. If it isn't the great Terrence Gottlieb. Others circle the agent, angels, and 5A_Canal-N's mind link. You have no idea what me and my friends have been waiting so long to do to you. Griffin raises the arm cannon, blasting the Sneersbury ringleader and a dozen of the other nearby prisoners. The aliens evaporate along with the entire wall behind them. See? He says, turning to Ever. This tech would have been wasted on those pirates. Alarms start going off as prisoners pour out of the hole and into the city beyond. We better get out of here while we have the chance, the wolf-faced agent says, reloading.
4.
In the sky where the council convened, Trayton tried to warn them that the mind link was spreading again, but they were running into different pieces of it across the multiverse, and most agreed that it was not a threat. In fact, there were many Traytons who completely sympathized with this newest iteration. They told themselves they should be worried about the historic meeting with Imogen and their standing on the council, but they were instead becoming concerned with protecting the motley crew from every corner of reality. Even though they knew so much, they wondered if the Otter killing the director was a good idea, or if they only thought it was a good idea because they were being influenced by their love for the newly forming mind link. Sebastian barricaded himself in the director's office. No one in or out. No one could discover his secret. He couldn't see his family or speak to anyone directly, so for weeks it was just him and Sarah Kay's corpse. He had placed her in a stasis field to stop the decomposition and spent many long nights talking to her as if she could respond. The Trayton-Uncentric found themselves increasingly alone as both the members of the council and even the other Traytons ostracized them. They only wanted the others to know the danger they're in. They'd lose their collective individuality, but they weren't listening. It was only after the other Traytons completely stopped speaking to them that they realized that they were now the outlying voice. No matter how much they tried to rejoin the conversation, the others had completely blocked them out. With horror, they watched the Trayton who was on the same planet as the Imogen, the one who had convinced them all that the Imogen was dangerous and got the council to let them get an audience, that Trayton was calling the shots. The Trayton-Uncentric didn't like it one bit. They could tell the angel was rogue, and it didn't sit well. Central agents, being suspicious, coupled with the fact that Sarah Kay's bodyguard disappeared mysteriously, made it impossible for Sebastian to stay cooped up. They wanted a meeting with the director, and it had to be in person, so the Otter strapped on a hard light hollow suit, powering up the director's body scan before going to the assembly. The auditorium was tense as Sebastian walked in. Many agents in the room were trained for war, knowing nothing besides murder and the constant fear of death. Seeing the director usually meant there was another world to be infiltrated and annihilated. They wouldn't admit it, but they were exhausted. "We've won," they heard her say. Upon further investigation, Trayton realized the most vocal of them was an imposter. They weren't even an angel at all. As they traced their quantal signatures, Trayton noticed that they had only appeared recently within the weakest of them, moving from vessel to vessel as they gained influence within the collective until they had tipped the balance. This Trayton decided to do something unthinkable, something that from the angelic point of view would be considered insane. He separated himself from the collective. From his point of view, there was no way to sneak up on a creature who duped his collective. Inside it, they were too powerful, with too many others to call to their aid and drown them out. This Triton had to go confront it for himself. He had to go to the Imogen meeting and argue his case for himself, or he would die alone in obscurity. After lifetimes of war, the agents finally experienced the joy of peace, and their celebration was wild. Everyone was trying to shake the director's hand, share their war stories with her, and thank her for all she'd done. Sebastian had to accept all this on Sarah Kay's behalf, knowing his friend and mentor would never see their relief for herself. Every angel on the council saw the Triton leap from the clouds, the collective explaining that he'd become an individual. As one body, each of their collectives went after him, drawing their swords. Nothing like this had ever been done in the history of their species, and they were going to have to put a stop to it before it spread to other collectives. If they realized they could think for themselves, their society would fall into absolute pandemonium, and they would simply become like every other race of creatures across the multiverse. Triton just laughed to himself as he slashed and outmaneuvered their attacks. He may not have multiple points of views on the battle anymore, but all of his focus was on the here and now, so everything was incredibly sharp relief for him.
6.
I met him, Sakan whispers to Triton as he carries her down the endless corridor. He was an ordinary person just like us. He made our world, he made us. It wasn't even his idea. He was trying to impress his boss. He wanted to trap the creature with us, but we escaped. We became real. She came. She lived through me while she slept. The older Illic saw the slime covered her entire body, so he assumed she was delirious. It was ridiculous to believe that they'd been recently created. They were creatures with an ancient history and past, a culture that formed over millennia. If it all came to an end one day, it would be because of the choices they had made, not some outsider. In her delirium, Sakan was settling the Minister camps on Illic. She and the rest of her race were constantly digging the underground cities of their masters. She had been born into it, the pain, the forced labor. It's all she'd ever known. The low ceilings made their wings unnecessary, and as a youngling, she wondered what purpose they served. Her uncle was one of the many that had had his forcibly removed for trying to make his way back to the surface, but he told her about the world outside and the sky above. He told her about how they were made for more than a life of servitude. They were made to rule and they were made to fly. It was up to her, he said, to free them. When certain disappeared, Sakan had shaken from her lethargy. He was strong and ingenious, an asset to the brutes. That they would throw him away meant that no one was safe from their blind stupidity. She couldn't bear to watch it happen to everyone she loved. She envisioned a better future for them. A city of mountains in the clouds, a place where they feasted on Menisker. Her fervor rippled through the camp, and they realized their claws were useful for more than just digging. Led by Sakan, the Illic fought against their masters, freeing themselves. They took to the sky where they belonged. The mountains were there like she'd envisioned, and they ruled on high. Triton listened to the creature who was his daughter from another world talk about things that had happened to him long ago. He shook his head. If they were created in a lab, why would anyone want to create a world like that? It didn't make sense. While he didn't fully subscribe to his brother's point of view, he did understand the feeling that you should hold the creator responsible. Triton laughed to himself. Maybe he was getting delirious too. There was no one to blame except random chance and the will of every creature. The Illic had come to realize that it was easier to blame the thing that made you than to take what you'd been given and try to make the best of it.
7.
We need to find safety for 5A_Canal-N's mind link, Triton says to Saki, as the Sneersburian peace droids pound down the street after them. I don't want them captured. These people won't understand what they are given their history. On Centric, they were fighting side by side to keep a rogue Triton from seeding, so Saki nods, slashing a hole at the feet of the incoming machine in an attempt to buy them some time. You better not make us regret this, they say to Triton. You are under observation by the Council because of your collective's instability. All of us used to love all of you, but we're finding we have to stifle our emotions since we no longer know who you are. Using his agency training, Terrence blends into the mind link, luring the peace droids into an alley. Everything Marilyn knew about combat was shared with the connected members. While the Sneersburian machines were more advanced than any of them, it didn't stand a chance against all of them working together. They moved as one body, using motion from one attack to power the next. In the middle of them, Terrence felt completely left out and had to devise his own strategy in the mayhem. He used his psionics to move people out of danger and fling dumpsters at the peace droid, cracking its outer shell enough to let the members of the Mind Link crawl inside. The machines hit the ground, exploding moments after everyone leapt free. "You sure you won't join us?" Marilyn asks. "If we knew everything you do, we could keep our people safe." "Not today," Terrence says with a smile, "but I wouldn't rule it out altogether." "Good, I'm glad you're thinking about it. All of us are better than any one of us. I know we're trained to be independent and strong, but we're not meant to survive alone." "We won't force you," 5A_K0N says as the backup sirens get closer. "But we're not going to have the luxury of sitting on the fence. Not everyone is ready to accept that we can live peacefully, and we may need to protect ourselves. Are you with us? Or—" "The Imogen will declare us innocent," Certain says to Trayton, using their wings for the first time in a lifetime, attacking the peace droids with Saki. "We're still the same beings, only changing with the times." They slash their flaming swords through the Sneersbarian machines, creating void that causes the robots to crumple in on themselves. "You can count on us. We're still the same leader we've always been." Early the next morning, Sebastian slipped away from the agent's revelry and back to the director's office. Every time he tried to leave, he was called back for a round of drinks or more congratulatory handshakes. The word spread and agents poured in from every corner of the multiverse. He had to stick around for each one since he needed to corroborate his story with their own eyewitness accounts. As he finally approached the director's door, a lone agent waited for him. Wharton, from Illick. "Director," he says casually, "if we've won the war, why is there a growing mind link on Sneersbury? It seems you're either misinformed or have been intentionally trying to mislead us." "I want all of you to head to the highest goat," 5A_K0N instructs our mind link. "We can claim multiversal amnesty there. I'll create a distraction for the Sneersbury machines. Go with Terrence. I need you to help keep an eye on the angel for me." At that moment, everything stopped as the warring angels, the robotic reinforcements, the linked and unlinked central agents, along with the ragtag mind-link community, catch sight of the Imogen strolling through the chaos as if she was all alone in the forest. Her presence, the very thing they had sought for without even knowing it, caught everyone off guard, so when time sped up again, the peace droids had them in their grip. Out in the endless corridor, Triton sees a lingering convergence of Sequis standing over him and Sakan. "Do you want some help?" she asks, looking at the gel-suited Illick's condition with sadness. "It's not supposed to be like this for any of you." "We gave everything for you," Orton says, entering the director's office with a disguised Otter. "We slaughtered members of our family and desecrated our homeworlds because you said it could be defeated. Are you admitting now that it's beaten you?" "The peace droids did what they do when they captured prisoners. They crushed them." The mind link was grounded into the pavement first. Ever and Griffin struggled with them until their exoskeletons gave way. Saki, Trayton, and the angels put up a good fight, but they were mortal. As the life fled their bodies, Certain slipped into an adjacent reality where Trayton and the other prisoners escaped without Griffin triggering the alarms. Saki meets Trayton's eyes as they slip quietly through the streets. "Who are you?" "I'm the reason we're on trial," they say. "I'm the force of change in the collective. I'm the one who chooses whether I live or die, and I'm doing it on my own terms." His angel guard stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend who they're speaking to. There were always variances between parts of the collective, and it was to be expected, but this being who they thought they knew was just so other. They understood now why there'd been such a big change in the Traytons. Something had crept in, corrupting the angel. Trayton read all of this on Saki's face and could see the distrust that Certain had experienced everywhere he went. They smiled. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want to get this mind link to the Imogen. I thought there was nothing good in existence. I was going to destroy her and everything else, but I see now there's hope." Trayton leaps into the air, leaving Saki behind and flying up to the head of the procession where 5A_K0N is. "I know we haven't seen eye to eye," they say to her. "My actions led to hurt on many, many worlds. There's no way for me to make it up to you or any of them, but I see now I went about it all wrong. I was trying to become the ultimate being in the multiverse. I didn't know any better. Forgive me." The Mind Link's leader looks at them cynically, not believing them. "I see what you're doing, and it's good," he goes on. "If the Imogen allows me to live, I hope I can join you." 5A_K0N shakes her head. We all trusted you, and you used us as a weapon. Drawing his sword, Trayton kneels before the Mind Link's leader and plants their blade in the pavement, stopping the entire Mind Link in their tracks. I swear on the life I may have left to protect you and your people against any danger that you may face. At that very moment, in many different realities, Trayton was being held to their vow, as not all versions of the Mind Link made it to this version of Snoozberry. On Tripper 4, they weren't able to identify the tribe that they belonged to and were gunned down. On Allswell, the Octans snuck up on them, psychically coordinating their attack and tearing their technology from them. The Angel could see it all. He was losing on many worlds. I came to kill her, Wharton says to the disguised Otter, but it seems I'm too late. Robbed of even this victory. It's a fitting end for her. She couldn't have survived peace. I thought the same, Sebastian says, holosuit powering down. It's for the best. I made every world good, if you can believe that, Sequoia says to Trayton, carrying the unconscious Sakan between them towards Sneersbury. Even Surma has its purpose, but most creatures don't understand that, remaking the world for themselves. Sequoia is waiting for them as everyone pours into the highest goat. Oh, you finally arrived, she says, overjoyed. I didn't want to end the lives of the others, but they would have gotten here instead, and I wanted to see your group in particular. The Imogen glides over to them, her furb tech tucked into the crook of her arm. I love all of you equally, but there are certain ones that I have a little more affinity for. You, she says to the 5A_K0N, crouching so they can look each other in the eye. You used your gift exactly as I hoped you would. It's going to kill you, but you knew that as a possibility from the beginning. You've seen so much. I admire your selflessness. She holds her furb tech straight up so it can see the mech-suited agents in the back, and they eye it with mounting aggression. Ma'am, under Central Ordinance 18.2_308.2:2, you cannot be carrying that device on an inhabited planet, Griffin says. Don't worry, Agent, Sequoia says quickly. She doesn't bite. She's a good girl. Griffin raises his arm cannon, pushing his way through the Mind Link crowd. Ma'am, put down the bioweapon or risk getting yourself destroyed in the process. Put a hole in my building, kid, the satyr says, and we're in for a world of hurt. Griffin, Sequoia says, it's only as dangerous as its user's ambition. I have none. She's capable of handling it, Trayton says, placing themselves between the Imogen and the wolf-faced agents. Besides, we have to discuss more important issues. The Angel pauses dramatically. Your Preeminence, how does the Mind Leak kill 5A_K0N? It's the nature of things, Sequoia smiles gently. Everything, even you, certain of Illic, are on a terminal path. No matter how much you fight it, your end is coming. Once Terrence knew that Trayton was certain, he edged his way toward the Angel through the Mind Link, readying his multiphasic deflector. He knew he was only getting one shot, especially with the Imogen so close, and he set the deflector to the maximum setting, one that would never be used in the entire history of the Bureau. His weapon's spread would be so wide that it would erase every near iteration to 100,000. Whole worlds would collapse. Timelines irrevocably changed as the action of one being was ripped from all reality. The modifications were of Terrence's own design, and that setting was only theoretical, of course, since no one had ever dared to experiment on seeing it, as they would be changing the very fabric of their own existence with such a move. This was his opportunity to reverse all the war and destruction that the Illic had brought by introducing the Furb Tech and the Mind Link driven by his own blind ambition. The agent raised the disruptor as Trayton talked to the Imogen, but suddenly froze, Sequoia stopping him with an outstretched hand. What is, she says. Let be what will be. Trayton sees the agent's drawn disruptor eyeing the modifications and sizing up the situation. You want to kill me, they laugh. Try it. I'll come back again and again. Not if we have a say, Saki says, quartering the Angel with her flaming sword. The hole ripped in reality sucked the Trayton Collective into a dark abyss, a black hole where they kept existing but could never escape, a place so infinitely small they were compressed into a single atom, yet spaghettifying them in every perceptual direction. There was only one mind that remained, one that had broken free, and Certain climbed aboard, remaining unnoticed as the last angel charmed his way through the worlds.
8.
The technology Captain Rain bought and sold on the black market had raised kings, shaped economies, and saved dying worlds. He wasn't going to let the passengers take off with his tech without a fight. He didn't care who they worked for. He scavenged the weapon. He was getting paid for it. Into the hallway, he commanded his crew. We'll kill those conniving agents and drink capital glooms over their bloody corpses. Tornado-like torrents greeted them as they exited their transporter, pulling the crew toward a rift where other alien pirates also struggled to avoid being sucked in. Rain powered his gel glove, shooting goo at the fissure as he slid down the hallway toward it. Rain's crew crashes into what's left of Gurig's crew, unable to stop their momentum even after the rift is temporarily sealed. Reichold, Captain Rain's engineer, is the first on his feet. Good thing we came along. You would have been mincemeat for sure. He pauses as he sees Gurig get to his feet. Well, I'll be, he says, drawing his subspace phaser. I guess being put out an airlock was too easy a sentence for a mutineer. Gurig draws his own gluon inverser. We put you down for mutiny. You fled, tail flapping. You want to watch where you're pointing that, Rain says, using his glove to put goo on the rift. That's my crew, and I'll put you all right back where I found you. Pirates on both sides raise their weapons, unwilling to back down from decades of mutinies as they argue about who has control over the ship. Enough, Gurig yells over the din. At this point, who cares? Rain, I've had your ship and it's falling apart, mate. I honestly don't know why I took it. Nothing but heartache. We had some really good times, and they were all over after I killed you. Help me track down these agents, and I will give you your old ship back. You could have your own interdimensional fleet. Got you too, Rain says. I don't take kindly to it, even if you murdered me. Those guys have been pushing us around for too long, and they need to come down a peg. We don't know which door they went into, Gurig says. Maybe a lost cause. You're a better first mate than a captain, Rain says, using a viewer. I tag my tech. He heads to Sneersbury. We'll drink capital glooms over their bloody corpses. The pirates arrive to find their repository in an uproar, prisoners in lockdown and peace droids on patrol. Captain Rain puts in a call as the guards move toward them. Governor? Yes, sir. I've only just arrived. How are you liking the most recent shipment? My thoughts exactly. Not to be too forward, but I could really use a favor. If you could put in a word for me. We'll be on our way shortly, and can send more tech your way.
9.
People flock to Triton on every world. And why wouldn't they? Regardless of their species or gender, angels were regarded as beautiful. Since it was his first time seeing everything for himself, he wanted to soak in the experiences. Of course, when he noticed the ailments of those around him, he had to help them. He had the technology, and as far as he was concerned, all the time in the world. But in the tiniest corner of the angel's mind, Certain was freaking out. While not trying to draw too much attention to himself, he tried to motivate Triton to get to Sneersbury, but the angel ignored the aberrant thought, investing himself in healing the pain of those around him. Why should he hurry to a place he didn't even know about when people needed him here? I felt his pulse, Sebastian says to Wharton, the world changing into whatever she willed it. I felt myself unable to resist being her pawn. He shuddered. I did it for too long. I trained others to do the same without question. When Connie died, the power moved to Sarah Kay, and when she died, it went elsewhere. We have to stop the source. Although he'd been on the run for a long time, Certain suddenly found himself alone. In the swirling darkness of the angel's mind, he witnessed everything outside like shadows on a cave wall, but they were far, far away. The timeless space went on infinitely as he considered how his own pain had blinded him to the suffering of every being around him. He couldn't believe that he had tried to destroy it all when there was such good everywhere. In his cocoon, he found peace within himself. It was in his rumination over 5A_K0N's mind link that gave him the ticket out of prison. Triton saw the multiverse as a beautiful place, so the hidden Illic began feeding him the idea of a perfect world where everyone understood each other, showing him where it existed in reality, and the angel was more and more growing enticed by it. Wherever the mind link is forming is where we'll find the source, Sebastian says, powering up Sarah Kay's image on the hollow suit. Knots in the rug always form around it, and it's the densest I've ever seen on Sneersbury. It's pulling everything into it. I'm pretty sure I've met the creature before, Wharton says as they head out. The acting director and Illick wind through the reveille of the Transverser Bay, agents trying to stop them along the way. Sarah Kay's receiver rings and the Otter picks up. Honey, we're not getting anywhere in our negotiations with the Imogen. How to proceed? Stay where you are, Griffin hears his wife say. We're currently headed to you. Certain had no idea how long he'd been isolated before he reached out to the Angel. He wanted him to know that they weren't enemies, that he saw what he was doing out there, that it was good. He wanted him to know that they were on the same side with the same goals. Even though he was an interloper, he meant no harm and was there to support Trayton. The Angel answered Certain with relief as the Illick speaks up, telling of his own loneliness. He was excited to be among so many different people and cultures, but he was confused by them. They didn't always say what they meant. Their histories were lost to him. Certain showed him who he was and where he'd come from. He showed him everything he had done. The mind link and how now, with 5A_K0N, everyone could exist in harmony. Trayton's heart leapt in his chest. He could regain everything he'd lost. The worlds flashed by Sebastian and Wharton as the Transverser jumped to Sneersbury, the Otter fuming. He couldn't stand the thought that someone was controlling him. It had been going on for long enough and had to stop. He didn't care what it cost. He was going to find the source and destroy it, freeing every creature, everywhere. Although Certain was sure he had seen everything there was to see in the multiverse, either through the eyes of the Trayton Collective or his hyperconnectivity in the CAK_BRD mind link, he panicked when the only surviving Trayton dropped everything and took flight directly up into the sky, breaking through the atmosphere with a sonic boom that shook the planet. From the eyes of the Angel, Certain watched world after world flash by below them. Dead worlds, clusters of tiny planets, tidally locked Earths that didn't spin. Trayton no longer cared what happened on them. He was trying to get to 5A_K0N as quickly as he could. I've never seen angels move like this, Certain says. We generally don't have to. We only use it for emergencies. I think this qualifies.
10.
Alien pirates burst through the door portal of the highest goat with their weapons drawn. They spy Griffin immediately, seeing as he is one of the only two people in the place wearing oversized mechanical armor. The pirates swarm him, hissing, but Cookie's voice carries over the clamor. Take it back to your own worlds. There's an interdimensional treaty in this establishment, and I will use force if you continue being unreasonable. Wordlessly, Griffin steps to the alien mob with Ever and 5A_K0N's mind link behind him. Reichhold laughs at Ever. Look, Captain, it's the World Destroyer. We have to be careful or there'll be nothing left of us. The pirates roar with laughter. In the sky above Sneersbury, Trayton circles. I don't want to be the one who gets the collective killed, he says to Certain. I was opposed to what we've become, the destructive course you convinced us to take. I got myself ostracized to do what I thought was right, and once the Imogen revealed that it was you who had corrupted us, we were shown no mercy by our own people. I can't fight them alone. I can't run forever. My only hope is to throw myself on the mercy of 5A_K0N's mind link and beg for the protection. Even if I survive the first wave of attacks, there's still 1 million of them. Trayton and Sequoia step out of the endless corridor into the grove of Sneersbury bushes, carrying an unconscious Sakan behind them. The bushes whisper to each other, calling to the aliens who carry the symbiotic plants in their gills. Citizens of Sneersbury came from all over the grove in order to help Sequoia, taking Sakan from her and placing her on their shoulders as they follow the Imogen into the city. You think you can take this arm cannon? Griffin yells at the pirates. I'd like to see you try. I've withstood attacks from more creatures than you've ever known exist. Cookie reaches for something under the counter, and Ever puts his hand on his friend's arm. Together, Certain and Trayton yearn for the comfort of the mind link. They land near the highest goat. Certain knew he didn't deserve to join them. He'd hurt so many people and caused entire species to be exterminated. The angel assured him that it would be all right. Once they understood the Illick the way that he did, they'd be glad to have him. Certain smiled in the darkness, amazed that he existed without his body. The creature that had been hurt was long gone, many lifetimes ago. The planet where he was hatched was destroyed, the beast who tormented him and his people forgotten. Why hold on to your anger anymore? What good does it accomplish? Trayton asked him. It was amazing to the Illick that he had been able to corrupt a whole host of angels, but the only remaining one was able to help him see the light. The creature he had been was dead now, and he acknowledged that it was for the best. If he could take back all the hurt and all the destruction he caused, he would. But as far as he had seen, time didn't work like that. 5A_K0N waited for Trayton inside the door. We've been expecting you, she says. But how did you know, the angel asks. We only just decided to join you. We called you, she says, the mind link moving between him and the angelic guards. Using Trayton's body, Certain draws the angel's flaming sword, panicking as he realizes he has nowhere to run. Across the multiverse, every being who was quantumly connected to him was dead, and it was Trayton's last life. He was relieved knowing he would fight to keep the angel alive, but if this was the end, he could finally rest. All of his struggles would be over forever, and the world would still continue on without him. Out of our way, Saki says to 5A_K0N. They've broken our laws and must pay. No, the human says. He wants to join our collective, and we count him as one of our own. The others move to Trayton with an eyepiece as he kneels humbly before them. Stop, Saki says quietly, her firmness cutting through the hubbub, and the room falls silent. If he's interconnected with you, he will only bring more destruction. No, Certain cries from Trayton's lips, their minds and hearts completely in sync. I've changed. I can see what she does is good. I've already wasted many of my lives. My only hope is to serve. But 5A_K0N's mind link retreats, leaving the angel sobbing. I cannot let you corrupt something so pure, Saki says to him over the crowd. You've been given many opportunities to change. I was with you when your people rallied in the Menisker cities. I showed you my goodness when I allowed you to escape and see the wonderful worlds I had created. I gave you a community to be a part of by getting you into the Bureau, but you only wanted to use all these people, these places, to advance your own self-serving agenda. Even as you brought chaos to one group of people that accepted and valued you, I gave you a man who was completely loyal to you. But you didn't care. You left her alone to die in a strange world because you were too busy elsewhere. You caused the Furbtech to spread, knowing how Central would respond, and I even sent your niece to you after all of that, but you wouldn't listen. So now it's too late for you, Certain of Illic. You've chosen your own corruption, and if given the chance, you will choose it again, so you must live with your consequences. At that moment, Sarah Kay walks to the door with Wharton, surveying the crowded establishment. Griffin spies her, pushing everyone out of his way to get to her. Agent Ibernus, she says, wiping the smile off his face and stopping him in his tracks. Before he can say a word, Saki comes to the door, followed by Trayton and the aliens carrying Sakan. Everyone stares in awe as the two Imogens approach each other, raising their arms in an embrace and melting into one another like someone meeting their reflection in a pool of water. Saki smiles, saying, "Put her in a booth." "Absolutely not," Cookie yells. "We're not leaving that Surma infestation in here." "You're not leaving that Surma infestation in here." Terrence works his way towards Trayton, preparing a glass cube. He's waited patiently for this opportunity, tracking the Illic for years, and he wasn't going to let the creature escape again. It was time to reverse all the damage that was done across the multiverse. He stopped just short of where the Illic knelt, Saki catching his eye. Suddenly he realized that there was no greater punishment that he could inflict on Certain than his own continued existence. Further, at this point, there would be decades of unseen circumstances. Who knew where he'd end up? Terrence lowers the glass cube. The pirates swarm, ever hijacking his mech suit with a device. "Get off," he yells. "No, I don't think we will," Captain Rand says, forcing the man to lift his arms and take aim at Griffin. "Give us the arm cannon, or we'll tear the roof off this place." The wolf-faced agent looks at Wharton and Sarah Kay. "I don't know who you are, and right now you're not my biggest concern. Letting this weapon fall into the hands will create a huge imbalance of power. Help me now, and I won't kill you when I find out what you've done with my wife. I wasn't always there for her. I should have been. We're in a dangerous line of work, but we loved each other. For a long time, we were all we had."
11.
"Marilyn," Terrence says to his former colleague as Griffin and the pirate had ever prepared to brawl, "I want to join you. I want to offer my skills to your collective. I've wasted my life on one vain pursuit, keeping my strength for myself. I don't want to die and be all alone. Please, speak to 5A_K0N for me. I need to know that I have a place." Marilyn puts her flipper on his arm. "We've been waiting for you. She's been reaching out to you since you were on Centric. You haven't come through everything you have to simply fade into the background of reality. She's got big plans for you." Certain watches agents he'd worked with, now much older than seemed possible, Rally behind Griffin as the two next-suited combatants go head-to-head. In his new body, he could be an asset to either side, but he knew that it wouldn't make a difference. Nothing would convince him that he'd changed. They'd only see him for what he had done. Griff, I have no part of this, Ever says, his power fist pummeling the outer shell of his friend's suit, making the metal scream. Believe me, I'd rather be anywhere else. Trigger your blink protocol, Griffin says, getting his friend in a headlock and pounding his cranial hole. You can take control by overriding the neural visualizer. That's it, Cookie yells as the two behemoths smash furniture, Wharton splashing alien blood on the walls as Sarah Kay blasts others into a mist on the carpets. The satyr raises his spider musket, dropping Ever to the ground with a zap that freezes his muscles and circuitry. Cookie recharges and hits Griffin too, the place falling silent as he does. Taking advantage of the quiet, Saki moves in on Trayton, raising his sword, but the other angel evades with a flip, plunging his own sword into them. The void causes them to fold inward with a shriek of horror that shatters the silence, and everyone turns to see Trayton shaking his head. This is not what I wanted for you, he says. The first sight the 5A_K0N collective saw through Terrence's eyes was Trayton's envoidment of Saki. The thought that ran through them was that the Imogen was right. Certain corrupted everything he came in contact with. They were relieved they'd been stopped in time. Terrence himself was astounded by all the thoughts surrounding him. The conversations were wordlessly flitting all around him. He had finally found himself in a place to call home, his knowledge spreading to 400 plus people in the collective. The feeling was intoxicating. He knew that together they were unstoppable.
12.
Director, Certain says, sheathing his sword. How wonderful you've come to visit us here. I can't think of the last time anyone outside the Bureau has seen your face. Even during the war you were elusive, like a ghost. In fact, there are many planets who believe that you were a myth. Why would you want to endanger yourself now? Especially with an active mind link forming. It seems it goes against you and your training. Sarah Kay keeps her particle disruptor aimed at the alien pirates. We came to speak to the Imogen, she says. It seems the world moved at her command and we need her to decide. Does she want to allow chaos to continue to reign, or will she take responsibility for her creations and bring it all back into order? The Otter, disguised as the director, speaks to the illic inside the angel, but directs their question directly to the source of all life. Certain laughs at the accusation. Yes, Master. When will you own your creation? Wordlessly, the Imogen moves to the gel-suited Sakan, laying her hands on the illic and causing the Surma to recede into nothing. One lives, another dies, she says sadly. Do you now understand why I've been so opposed to her for so long, Trayton says. What kind of benevolent creator is indifferent to the suffering of their creation? Certain of illic, I wasn't indifferent to your suffering. Before you were hatched, your people hunted Menasker for food. They enslaved your people to live in peace. And you, Sebastian of Sabenia, the Arbs of your world tortured the Currents, the Dingo's technology, turning them into your slaves. You had no idea or care that the food you were feeding them was only enough to keep them nourished, but not enough to satisfy their hunger. When they broke free, they had generations of cravings. So it's our fault that bad things happen to us, Trayton says, crossing his arms. Not entirely, she says, but every world is thrown out of balance when individuals or groups try to secure more for just themselves. The effects get worse over time. Never her fault, is it? Trayton says to Cookie. She orchestrated the moments that made us who we are, but it's still on us. Please tell me you have a neural reducer. I don't carry the hard stuff, bud. Never good to try to run from your problems. Wow, you too, huh? Certain says sarcastically, twisting the angel's beautiful features. So you're going to heal my niece, but you're going to let the creature continue to pose as the CIB's director. Doesn't that seem wrong to you? You want her husband to keep wondering where his wife is and what's become of her? It hardly seems fair. The pirates around Griffin shift uncomfortably, looking at Cookie as the wolf-faced agent gets up. Who are you? What'd you do with her? Griffin asks, his speech slurring. You couldn't stay where you were. Did you come all this way to mock me? He stumbles, his knees giving out, the mech suit's weight shaking the building. Face it, Certain laughs. She's dead, Agent. How else could the imposter be here? You think she would allow it? What other fate do you think she had coming for her? Sic semper tyrannis. You wage war, you get what you get. Believe me, I know. Tears fill Griffin's eyes. Show some respect, traitor, before I end you. Sebastian deactivates the hard light hollow suit, revealing himself. I had to, Griffin. Her bloodlust was insatiable. She wanted the destructions of worlds to go on forever. Are you going to let that go? The angel mocks Ever as he gets up unsteadily. He killed your leader. Everyone eyes Cookie warily as he keeps his weapon aimed at them. Oh, don't worry about them. I'll keep him busy. Trayton flips over the bar, drawing his sword, but the satyr dodges the attack. Chaos erupts in the highest goat as the owner's threat is removed. Pirates versus mech-suited agents, Griffin turning on Sebastian. The agent's arm cannon rocks the building as he blows holes in the floor, trying to blast the Otter. Wharton leaps onto the wolf-faced agent's suit, throwing off the pirate, and Ever is autopiloted over to Griffin to help them. Sikan sees Wharton getting overwhelmed and rises with renewed strength, claws slashing through the aliens. 5A_Canal-N's mindlink no longer has the ability to stay neutral as they had tried to avoid being trampled. They use their newly acquired psychic abilities to throw everything that's not nailed down. Through many eyes and with many hands, 5K_Canal-N's mindlink tries to hold the pirates back from Griffin and Sebastian away from Sequi. They knew that she could take care of herself, but they were worried about what she'd do to the Otter and what could happen to everything if Sebastian was carrying a glass cube. Years of combat trained his skills, though, and he was getting uncomfortably close to the Imogen. It was clear he had already had a cover story prepared, and they were dead set on ending Sequi's influence, so Marilyn did the only thing she could think of. She drew her techno wand, fusing the Otter and most of the rest of the mind link into one solid mass of flesh. The wand's blast was indiscriminate, taking pirates and bar patrons alike, growing in size as it repurposed their body. Everyone stops fighting, staring at the monstrosity pushing the walls and ceiling, cracking them open to reveal the green sky outside. Griffin looks at the information speeding across his heads-up display with total awe. Where are we? We're so far off the map that we don't even have a record of this world's existence. I guess we don't need to exercise caution anymore, he says, blasting the aliens off Ever and putting a hole in the wall behind him. He turns, pointing his arm cannon at Cookie. You want to tell us where we are? Not sure you'll survive a blast from this. Surprise, the satyr says. The highest goat exists in a hell world. Real estate was cheap and no one breaks in when I'm on vacation. It's not on your maps because it's as far as you can get into the center of the universe, in the deepest part of the rift. You're going to show us how to get off the planet so we can go home, Griffin says. Actually, no. I have all this damage to clean up that you caused. And I have to rebuild the portal, by hand, to get back in business on all 235 worlds. Even if you shoot me, you'll still be stuck. You just won't have the directions to the only exit off of here. Cookie points to the purple suns, and straight that way across the acid sea. Everyone out, the satyr shouts. Especially you, he says, pointing at the amalgam that used to be the 5A_Canal-N's mindlink and Sebastian. It groans as it slides outside. Come on, Griffin says to Ever. If we don't get back to the Bureau, there will be a nasty power vacuum. They step out of the highest goat onto the island's black sand, night creeper circling in the sky overhead. Triton, Sikan, and Wharton follow with Sequi right behind. I suppose you're feeling pleased with yourself, he says. I hope to get all of you together, yes, the Imogen smiles. You still have a chance. Triton leaps out of the highest goat and into the air as Cookie fires after him.
End of Chapter 10. Thank you for listening to this audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, a series novelization written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you'd like to read more of this book, read chapters from the series, listen to audio, and further support the development of this project, please go to patreon.com/SheCameFromNowhere. Link in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe this video. Until next time, we'll see you soon.